Imagine planning the perfect life with someone you've loved for years, only to have everything ripped away in the most painful way possible. That was my reality. I was ready to marry Sara, build a future together. But then came the ultimate betrayal. She wasn't just cheating on me. The man she turned to was my own brother. And it didn't stop there. She's pregnant with his child. In a matter of months, my entire world collapsed. What do you do when your fiancé and your family shatter your trust? This is my story of heartbreak, betrayal, and hopefully rebuilding. Stick around. I promise you won't believe where this journey takes me. I was 32, engaged to Sara, and convinced we were building something real, something that mattered. After 5 years together, we were making plans for the wedding, and I even started imagining a family with her. It was that kind of satisfaction that makes you feel like you're heading in the right direction. But looking back now, I wonder if I missed the subtle signs. Maybe I wanted too badly to believe in her intention, in our future. Everything seemed perfect, or at least I convinced myself that it was. We dove deep into wedding plans. From picking out the apartment to mapping out our future trips, we thought of everything. It felt so stimulating, so full of possibility, especially the idea of starting a family. Sara was all in, or so I thought. I trusted that. She had this way of making me feel like I was the center of her world, which only pulled me in deeper. But now that I think about it, there were little things that didn't quite add up. I ignored them, pushing aside the doubts that started creeping in. I convinced myself everything was okay. Then, things started unraveling. Slowly at first, but unmistakably. One moment, it felt like everything made sense. The next, I was questioning everything I thought I knew about her, about us. What I mistook for happiness was just a surface-level satisfaction. The intention I believed in, the trust one had put in her, suddenly felt shaky. I didn't realize it at the time, but cracks had already formed in the foundation we were building. And soon, that entire world would collapse beneath me. Growing up, I always felt the weight of not being the favorite. My younger brother, Mike, was the golden child in our family, no matter what he did. I, on the other hand, could never quite measure up. He's 3 years younger than me, but from the moment he was born, it was like the spotlight just followed him around. Every little thing he did was praised, while my accomplishments felt overlooked, almost dismissed. The more they celebrated him, the more I was pushed aside. It was frustrating, but I tried to accept it, thinking I just needed to work harder. Our parents always had a way of showing their favoritism without ever saying it outright. When Mike failed, it wasn't really a failure in their eyes. It was a learning experience. But if I slipped up even a little, it was criticism after criticism. It built up over the years, creating this toxic dynamic that I couldn't escape from. No matter what I did, I felt like I wasn't enough. And, to be honest, the resentment started to eat at me. I distanced myself as soon as I had the chance, thinking space would ease the tension, but it never really went away. Even after I left home and tried to make my own way, that resentment stayed with me. It was always there, just under the surface. Whenever I talked to them, I'd feel it creeping back in, reminding me of all those years I spent trying and failing to be seen. But as much as I tried to keep my distance, family ties have a way of pulling you back. Little did I know, Mike wasn't done casting his shadow over my life, and the worst was yet to come. For months before our wedding, everything came crashing down. Sara told me she was pregnant, but instead of joy, I felt a sudden chill. She couldn't look me in the eye when she said it. That's when she confessed the unthinkable. The baby wasn't mine. It was Mike's, my own brother. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut. Sara, the woman I was about to marry, had been having an affair with Mike, and it all started at our engagement party. That night, Mike convinced her she was making a mistake by marrying me. They kept their relationship hidden for months, right under my nose. It was all so calculated. Sara was living with me, planning our wedding, while sneaking around with him. Mike, the brother who already had everything handed to him, took one more thing, my future. And the worst part, it wasn't just a fling. It turned into something deeper, something permanent. The baby was proof of that. Suddenly, my entire life, our plans, our love, meant nothing. I had been left in the dark, blindsided by the two people I thought I could trust most. The betrayal was a double-edged sword. I lost Sara, but I also lost what little faith I had left in my family. Mike wasn't just my brother anymore. He was the man who destroyed my relationship, who stole my life right out from under me. I couldn't help but wonder, how long had they been plotting this? What did I do to deserve this? My mind kept racing, but the truth was too painful to process. And I knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning of the fallout. When Sara finally admitted the truth, I couldn't bear to look at her. I told her to leave. Right then, right there, the house we had shared, the life we were building, it all felt tainted. I threw her out, and I wasn't gentle about it. Every word she tried to say just fueled the fire burning inside me. I had no interest in her apologies or excuses. I needed space to breathe, to understand how the woman I loved and my own brother could do this to me. But I didn't have long to process it. Mike was next. I confronted him the same day, and his reaction? A shrug. He downplayed the whole thing, as if it was no big deal. He even had the nerve to suggest it was somehow my fault. He implied that I hadn't been a good enough fiancé, that I wasn't keeping Sara happy, as if that justified what they had done. The rage that boiled inside me was like nothing I'd ever felt before. I wanted to make him feel even an ounce of the pain he had caused me. So I went to his apartment to confront him again. But when I arrived, our parents were already there. Of course, they took Mike's side, just like always. They believed his twisted version of events, where I was the problem and he was just a guy trying to help. They told me to forgive him, to move past it. They even had the audacity to suggest that I should support Sara during her pregnancy. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I stood there in the middle of that room, realizing that I wasn't just losing Sara. I was losing my family too. In that moment, I cut ties with all of them. I walked out, not looking back. After I walked away from them, I knew there was no going back. I cut off all contact with my family. I moved out of the apartment I had shared with Sara and found a new place. Something small, something that didn't remind me of what I'd lost. I changed my number, blocked them all, and tried to start over. It wasn't easy. I started therapy, hoping to piece myself back together. But every day felt like a battle against the anger, the betrayal. It was exhausting, and no matter how far I tried to run, they wouldn't let me go. Mike and my parents kept pushing. They showed up at my work, sent messages through mutual friends, and even had distant relatives reach out to try and convince me to forgive. Forgiveness? They didn't understand the depth of what they had done. It wasn't just about Sara and Mike. It was about years of feeling like I didn't matter, like my feelings were never considered. I had no intention of reconciling. Their constant attempts to pull me back into their toxic web only made me more determined to stay away, to protect whatever was left of my sanity. But the harder I tried to distance myself, the more suffocating their persistence became. Every time I saw Mike or heard my parents' voices in those messages, it felt like reopening a wound that hadn't healed. The therapy helped, but it wasn't enough to erase the damage. I realized that moving on wouldn't be as simple as cutting them out. They were determined to drag me back into the mess they created, and I wasn't sure how much more I could take before something snapped. Sara chose Mike. After everything, she decided to keep the baby and build a life with him. It was like watching my nightmare come to life in slow motion. They didn't waste any time. My parents were over the moon about becoming grandparents. I couldn't wrap my head around how quickly they embraced the whole situation, as if nothing had happened, as if I was the one who was supposed to disappear quietly. But Sara? She had the nerve to ask if we could still be friends, for the sake of the baby. Friends? The thought alone made my skin crawl. It wasn't just about the betrayal anymore. It was about the audacity. How could she expect me to play any role in their perfect little family? Seeing her with Mike, seeing them create the future that was supposed to be mine, it felt like a new kind of torture. They moved on so easily, as if I had been nothing more than a footnote in their story. My parents were completely on board, acting like Mike's child was some gift to the family. The satisfaction I once felt at the thought of becoming a father had been stolen, twisted into something I couldn't recognize. The pain lingered, growing with every passing day. The thought of Sarah's baby being raised by Mike, my own brother, cut deeper than I could explain. It was like losing not just her, but the future we had planned together. And the worst part, they expected me to be okay with it, to stand by and accept it like some kind of afterthought. But I couldn't. Every message from Sara, every update about the baby, felt like a new betrayal. It became clear that the only way to survive was to stay as far away from them as possible. The emotional toll of their betrayal was crushing. Trust, I couldn't even think about it. How could I ever open up to anyone again, knowing how easily the people closest to me had torn my life apart? I avoided relationships, friendships, even simple conversations felt heavy. It was as if everyone I met was carrying hidden intentions, ready to betray me at the first chance. The satisfaction I used to find in social connections was gone. Instead, I built walls so high that no one could get through. I wasn't just protecting myself. I was shutting the world out completely. Legally, I took action to keep them out of my life. A restraining order against Mike and my parents felt necessary. It was the only way I could regain some sense of control. But even that wasn't enough. They violated the order, showing up at my workplace at the gym. It was like they couldn't understand boundaries, like they thought they could force me to forgive them. Every time they crossed the line, it pushed me further away. I was done playing the role of the forgiving son, the brother who would just brush it all off. Enough was enough. Even with the restraining order in place, they kept coming. The legal battle became another burden, one I hadn't expected. I had to fight to maintain the distance I needed to heal. But instead of respecting my boundaries, they made me the villain, painting me as the one overreacting. It was draining, emotionally, financially, mentally. I couldn't even go to the gym without wondering if Mike would show up. I wasn't just fighting them. I was fighting to keep what little peace I had left. But I knew deep down, this was a war I couldn't win by staying where I was. It all came to a head one day at the gym. I hadn't seen Mike in weeks, and honestly, I thought maybe he'd finally gotten the message to stay away. But there he was, smirking like nothing had ever happened. My blood boiled instantly. I tried to ignore him, focus on my workout, but every second I spent in that room with him felt like a ticking bomb. And then out of nowhere, he made a comment. Something small, something stupid, but it was enough to push me over the edge. Before I knew it, I was in his face, fists clenched. What started as words quickly escalated into something physical. I don't even remember the exact moment I threw the first punch, but once I did, there was no going back. The frustration, the betrayal, months of anger, it all came out in one violent burst. Mike fought back, of course, and suddenly we were in a full-blown brawl. People around us were shouting, trying to break us up, but it was like I couldn't stop. All I wanted was for him to feel an ounce of the pain he'd caused me. I had lost control, and I knew it. The fight ended, but not without consequences. Mike went straight to the police and filed an assault charge against me. Now, on top of everything else, I was facing legal trouble. It was almost laughable. The person who destroyed my life was now turning me into the villain. But this wasn't a fight I could win with fists. It was time to rethink everything. I couldn't stay here. Couldn't keep living like this, trapped in a cycle of anger and pain. If I didn't leave soon, I knew I'd lose more than just a fight with Mike. I'd lose myself. After everything, I knew I had to get out. Staying meant constantly being haunted by the past, by the pain, by them. So, when the opportunity for a work transfer to Seattle came up, I didn't hesitate. It was the escape I needed, a chance to start fresh somewhere far from the drama. Packing my things and leaving the city behind felt bittersweet, but I knew it was necessary. I couldn't rebuild my life if I stayed in the same place where it all fell apart. Seattle felt like a promise of something better, something that didn't hurt. Moving wasn't easy, though. There was always that lingering thought. What if they followed me? What if they found a way to drag me back into the mess I was trying so hard to leave behind? But I couldn't let fear hold me back anymore. The satisfaction of knowing I was finally taking control of my life, of my future, gave me a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. The chaos and betrayal had consumed me for so long, but Seattle was my chance to breathe again, to start from scratch. Once I settled in, I realized just how much I needed to change. The distance from Mike, Sara, and my parents gave me clarity. I wasn't running away. I was choosing myself for the first time in years. The work transfer was just the beginning. I knew the real work was in rebuilding my trust, my sense of self. It wasn't going to happen overnight, but at least I was on the right path. It was time to stop looking over my shoulder and start focusing on what was ahead. And this time, I wasn't going to let anyone else derail my life. I'm exhausted, emotionally, mentally. Every part of me feels worn out from everything that's happened. The betrayal, the fights, the legal mess, it's all weighed on me for too long. But now, I think I'm finally ready to move on. The support from friends and even strangers has helped me more than I could have imagined. It reminded me that not everyone in my life is out to hurt me. I've learned who I can rely on, and that's been a relief. Still, I know the real healing has to come from within. No one else can fix this for me. As much as the past keeps pulling me back, I know it's time to let go. I can't keep replaying what happened with Sara, with Mike, with my parents. It's like a tape stuck on repeat, and the more I dwell on it, the harder it is to move forward. Seattle is a fresh start, but it's up to me to make sure I don't drag the past into my new life. It's time to stop looking for closure from people who will never give it to me and focus on my own healing. That's where my real satisfaction will come from. I'm not saying I'm completely healed, not by a long shot, but I've made the first steps, and that's what matters. There's a long road ahead, but for the first time in a while, I'm looking forward to what's next. No more dwelling on the past, no more letting the pain control me. It's time to build something new, something for myself. I've spent too long living in the shadow of what happened. Now, it's time to step into the light and create a future that's truly mine.
Keep watching our stories by clicking on one of the videos that appear on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to be alerted about new videos. See you next time.